Yo, 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 what's going on? This is the NRW, where nerds rule the world. It's your boy, Kuya P, aka Patrick.strange, the Adobro, the Babinka boy, the leader of the Holla Holla homies in the Center gang of the ShoPowSho. And we are back. Almost everybody. We're still missing Kataphorric. She's doing her thing over in Japan. But today, I'm excited to see her. I haven't seen her in forever. It feels like forever. Miss Viva Valentina, how are you today, Tina?
Hello. Yes, it has been a couple weeks since we recorded, so excited to be back. We have a lot going on.
Oh yeah, a lot of stuff going on, a lot of stuff planned out. We gotta talk on it at some point, and the people will be seeing it very soon though, because it's coming. Mm-hmm. It's coming. But thank you for giving me some of your time today. We have a great one, and actually this one today is something that we've been, why we decided to do ShoPowSho and bring about the stories of our friends and our people. But for both of us, we didn't really get Philippine history growing up here in the States and around the world, being as military kids, right? So I'm so excited for this one. I caught wind of this with some of my friends. Shout out to Patricio Janelsa and the Lumpia with a Vengeance crew. They were out there having their film at the San Diego Film Festival, and I caught wind of this amazing filmmaker by the name of T.S. Botkin. Well, we're going to call her Tammy for short. Tammy put together this amazing documentary. We're going to have her on today. You're going to learn a lot more about it. We're going to actually throw it to the trailer right now, and then we'll come back with our conversation with Tammy. So here we go. The trailer for A Long March. Here we go.
I never thought that being a veteran will be a second-rate citizen in the United States.
This narrative of World War II as the United States saved the world from fascism. The Filipinos contributed to that effort to an enormous degree, and they have been essentially written out of that story entirely.
A promise was made that if you defend our country, we will provide you with certain benefits. There are 57,000 that were killed in action. Thousands more were wounded for life, yet you won't recognize them?
So we formed a rally in front of the White House demanding that we be included in coming talk about veterans' benefits.
Here was a promise, a solemn promise on the part of Americans. And by congressional action, we break that promise. And as I speak here, men are dying. It's not a matter of money, Mr. President, it's a matter of honor.
I remember in one of the hearings, and they voted it down, and there were hundreds of Filipino veterans massing on the hallway.
Out of thin air, they started singing God Bless America. That is who they are. They're Americans, and we owe them.
They still believe that somewhere, sometime, somehow, America will do the right thing.
This is not a Filipino issue. This is an American issue. Because who did they fight for? The United States.
Does America really uphold the values that it says it does?
Boom, there you go. That was the trailer for A Long March. Yes, y'all, I know there's some kind of tears coming through because I was feeling it. Just everything in that, there's a lot there. And as you see on the screen, the amazing filmmaker behind it, so honored to have her here today. T.S. Botkin, aka Tammy, thank you so much for coming through and sharing a little bit about this film with us today.
Thank you for inviting me to come and talk, Kuya P. I appreciate it. And if you want to call me T, you can. That is what I went by in high school. But I grew up, I had kids. And so I try to go by, I don't know, I have an identity crisis going on. So you call me what you want.
Oh no, I feel it. Same way. That's why I sometimes Patrick, sometimes P. I never Pat. I don't like Pat because Pat reminds me of that SNL skit from back in the day. And that just drove me nuts. Exactly. So, and people always wonder why. I'm like, yeah. So I always appreciate when people ask. So that's I feel you in every way. But thank you so much, T. Thank you again. This when I saw that trailer and when I saw the description in the breakdown for it coming to the San Diego Film Festival, I was like, whoa, I got to learn more about it. And so I was so thankful for you to respond to my reach out to talk about this. So, but a little bit before that, we like to know and get to know some of the people behind projects before we talk about it a little bit. If you could just, give me a little bit about your history as a filmmaker. I see you've been working for a while and you actually participate in helping bring voices about female filmmakers, which I love. Can you just talk a little bit about yourself before Long March came along?
Sure. So I haven't always been a filmmaker. I've had many weird jobs in my past lives. I've been working in the film industry since about 2014. I blame my husband for that. I also thank him for that. I met him in 2011 and he's always been in the industry. He made his first film when he was 15 and started winning awards. So I started out doing craft services for him. I fed the crews. And then I realized, well, this was project management stuff. And so I started producing. And the first feature that I got to produce for is Mary Jane's The Women of Weed, about women in the cannabis industry. And the role that they were playing early on and still do, they really were storming the industry in the beginning. Men have kind of taken over as, it's kind of typical in the United States of what happens when an industry grows to a certain point and the money starts showing up. But and then followed that up with a pilot for a series about women in male-dominated sports. It was called Her Turf, and that was about 3 women who were referees working their way up into the NFL. So it was pretty fun, and So I love working with voices that are hitherto rather unheard.
I love it. Yes. There's so many unrepresented voices that need showcasing, and that there's so much more to the world than is generally what we get to, on TV and film or whatever. So I love that you're fighting the good fight. Thank you for joining us with that, TS. So how did A Long March come your way? Like, what was it about this project? Can you take me to the beginning?
Yeah. So in 2015, my aunt passed away, and I started having my uncle over fairly regularly. And my aunt was a collector. She collected everything, like tons of like glass, like special antique glass and
knickknacks.
Cut crystals, and
I love
Disney collection was crazy. Her Disney collection was crazy, and I was helping my uncle go through all of this, and he's like, "Well, I have this huge crate with these paintings in the basement," and he didn't actually let me see them for a long time. He just kept telling me he had these crates of these gory paintings, and they were from World War II. And he told me, he's like, as he figured it out, he's like, "Well, they're from the Bataan Death March," and I was like, "Well, what's that? Is that like what they beat people with batons?" I mean, I was like completely just as dumb as a rock on the subject. Didn't know. And he says, "No, it was in the Philippines." And I'm like, the Philippines? In World War II, I don't get this, because it's not what we're normally taught. I did get A's in history, but this wasn't something that was taught. And but it was still a subject of the paintings. And these paintings were done by some Army fellows who actually had never even been in the Philippines, that they had just picked up the story and were ordered to paint these paintings. And so we talk about the paintings, and he's like, "Well, my lawyer says we should do something." And I'm like, "Yeah, white man make war." That was my that was kind of my attitude about it. And so he would come over for dinner once a month, and he would update me. And then one night he came over and he said, "Well, let me tell you about the paintings." And I rolled my eyes, and he says, no, I took them to a Congressional Gold Medal ceremony. And I was like, "You did what?"
Oh, wow.
And he says, "Yeah, here in town." And he says, "There was a bunch of Filipino people there." And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Did you know we completely screwed the Philippines during World War II?" And first off, this is not normally how my uncle talks to me. But secondly, I didn't know. And I was like, "Are you kidding me?" And he says, did you know that the Philippines were a part of the United States? And I'm like, I'm sorry, what? Did I? No, apparently not. So I went down the rabbit hole with him finally, and was just totally shocked. And now I understand why this is not generally taught in the United States. It's not a flattering story of the United States and our behavior. It is a story of imperialism. So there was another Congressional Gold Medal ceremony going to be happening in the Denver area. And I requested from one of the representatives from Filvet Rep, who does those ceremonies, if I could come just bring a camera and film. And I was still pretty stupid as to what I was embarking on. But I will tell you, I sat down at the first interview. It was with a man whose name is Frank Catallo, and he started telling me his memories as a child and his memories of his father who served. And I was in tears, and I was hooked. I knew that this story had to be told. And that was my journey in.
Wow.
Wow.
That's awesome. And shout out to your uncle for, recognizing that, seeing that, informing you about that. And that, yeah, that's, I'm feeling it in my soul because I've, just so many emotions, my father's white, my mom's Filipino. So that's my immigrant story. And for a lot of us Filipinos, and, and we don't get taught that history because of that ugliness, if you will, that imperialism story.
I specifically remember learning in school that the US acquired the Philippines and that it was considered the white elephant colony that we got like dumped with. And I remember thinking like, I'm Filipino. I was like, oh, that's what happened to the Philippines. And just being like really like kind of affronted that like that was like the page in the history book, was that like, yeah, and then we got dumped with the Philippines and we had to like take care of them, I guess, until they wanted to rule themselves. And it's like,
that's pretty gross. That's a pretty gross version, if you ask me.
And to grow up kind of hearing hearing my own family's stories about it. Like I was always told this story about during World War II. And like to this day, I still don't know like the validity of the story. So I never heard this from my grandpa, but I was told this story from my mother that that the Japanese had come to the town where they all lived, and they had rounded up all the men, and they had taken them to this bridge, marched them to this bridge, and they were going to kill them. And the soldiers saw my my mom's uncle, and they thought he looked Japanese, and they were like, "What are you doing here? Go home." And he's like, yeah, can I bring my brothers? And they're like, yeah, get out of here. And they left, they fled. And that was like part of the occupation there, and that they had survived because he didn't look Filipino. And like, it's a weird story too, because later he married a Japanese woman, but like, it's like this like weird, like family, like tale of this time. And it's just so wild to like think about. And then when you read about that period of time in the history books, it's just kind of like, you see these political cartoons of the white elephant of the Philippines. I was just like so confused as a child learning about that. Like, oh, no, sorry to get heavy.
That's kind of what it is. The propaganda of white imperialism, it's strong medicine. It's not good medicine, but it is strong medicine. And for me personally, I'm not just white. I have Lenape heritage, and I had known it during my childhood. We knew that we had Indian blood, but nobody in the family would talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't until after my grandmother had died, and she had given me our lineage, but it was interesting. She stopped where it was obvious where the Lenape line began. But I did eventually go back and research it, and I found that lineage, and then I started really researching Eastern woodland Indians, because there was only so much I could find regarding the Lenape tribe at the time, and so I really understood this history of what happened at the foundations of what we now call America. But then when I came across this story, it was just crystal clear to me that what happened between the US and the Philippines was basically a continuation of the policy of manifest destiny. We had conquered this continent. We had been in a war. We were allegedly allies with the Philippines. The Philippines clearly declared their independence from Spain, but then 6 months later, we purchased the Philippines, which of course, most Americans do not know that, we fought then. We had to fight Filipinos to seize control, and the numbers in some cases, and it's kind of hard to tell. They didn't do great censuses back then, but it looks like up to a quarter of the people populating the Philippines were wiped out in order to gain control. And it's just, again, right out of the playbook of what happened with the conquest of America, of wiping out Native American tribes. And it just kind of blew my mind. And I knew that we could not fully tell the story of what happened in World War II without understanding the basis for the betrayal that was yet to come in 1946. And yeah, it just shocked me.
Yeah. Wow. Oh man, I get so emotional thinking about that, and being a history buff as well, and like I'm the ancestry guy in my home, doing the heritage and the blood and all of that, looking even further back, and it's something we have to face in order to change and make moves for the future. We have to confront it, learn it, educate it, and then build from there to make sure it doesn't happen again. So as you stated earlier, you started interviewing people and you learned about this story. So take me to those beginning steps as well, as so like you're hooked after that. I would assume that first interview, but like researching and then gathering, then to when did you exactly make it a thing? Was it after the first interview? Okay, I'm going to turn this into a documentary. I'm going to build this into. Can you take me into those like foundational pieces of constructing this?
Sure. Originally my thoughts were, I'm going to do a short film on this, tying the artwork to whatever the story is that develops, because the artwork is quite striking, and it is one thing that we had that nobody else has seen. I mean, those things got made, they got shut in a crate, they were shipped off to the commander of Hamilton Field, which was, I guess, just north of San Diego not San Diego, sorry, San Francisco at the time. That man happened to be my aunt's neighbor, and he had given her those, and he never said where they came from or anything, but our research discovered that he was indeed the commander of the air base back then. So it's just totally bizarre that we even ended up with them, but we knew that there was something there, but it was interesting because it just kind of drove us to ask more questions, and eventually we asked enough questions. So that first experience of recording, again, I thought we're gonna figure out like maybe an 8-minute long short that can go to film festivals. And after we had done that filming, it was just, we couldn't contain it. We try and put something together and there's too many questions. So we finally let it breathe out to about 20 minutes. And then we had a test audience come over to our living room. We packed them in, fed them food, gave them stuff to drink, and then we sat them down. And every single person in the room said, you know, we got to know more. We got to know more. And it was about 3 days after that that a friend of mine, a filmmaker who happens to be Japanese American, called me up and he said, I know you're not going to be comfortable with this because you've never directed before. And you seem to think that you can't do it, but you need to do a feature. You have to, if you're going to do it justice. So I blame Scott Takeda all of the time. He says it's not my fault. So we just kept digging. So we set up a handful of interviews with the help of Phil Vet Rep out in Washington, D.C. And we went to the National Archives with General Taguba and one of the lawyers that does a lot of pro bono work for Phil Vet Rep. His name is Seth Watkins. And we started digging through Army policies and whatnot. And so we'd already known the betrayal of Congress to have said in 1946 that veterans were not on active duty. But when we were at the National Archives, we came across more documentation in the years to follow from the U.S. Army that was explicitly denying any recognition of women who served outside of the role of a registered nurse. And certain guerrilla units that were thought to not have the appropriate political leanings, even within approved guerrilla units, you had to meet certain numbers in a unit. So if there were too many people, they just arbitrarily had to throw names out. And it just was this hot mess, but at the core of it, there was still a very racist policy and a very sexist policy. And we didn't know that when we started that project. And it was difficult because we're dealing with aging veterans. So we're trying to now shift from, we were going to do a short film to no, we're going full blown feature film. We've got to fundraise. We've got all this stuff going. And then COVID hit. And we couldn't safely access our veterans. And some of the veterans we intended on interviewing died early on. And it became this massive, massive challenge of racing the clock, a clock that will not yield, and a pandemic that just seemed to not yield. And holy cow, what an experience it has been.
Oh, I'm feeling this right now. It's like, it's so heartbreaking, so heartbreaking. And the title's A Long March. It's like, stop already. Like, but it's so important.
It's so tough because, to sit with the veterans, and to have that opportunity to have actually been able to sit with some of the veterans, and talk with them is just, it's astonishing. And very sadly, Celestino Almeida, who is featured prominently in the film, passed away on Sunday.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It's so tough. I'm normally of the spiritual mindset that, throwing off the mortal coil is great. And he's 104 years old. But I still feel like there's so much more I wanted to have done before he left. I wanted him to see. I did. And it's tough and it's scary. And, this isn't the only death we deal with, actually. I mean, we're dealing with him after the film, but we did deal with a death during the film. And again, it's that racing the clock for these veterans, that is a huge thing. But it is also, regardless, this is, I believe, ancestral work, and it has to be done. We see what happens, what's going on in the Ukraine right now. That's imperialist policy. Flat out, that's what's going on. And we as a country want to stand and, well, shame. But we don't want to admit when we've done it. That's part of the problem. I mean, we have to. And we have to flip and apologize at some point.
Thank you. First off, I just want to say that they're going to live on through your work. And I can't thank you enough again, T. And I'm sure they're going to live on through your work, and it's going to be for the great good. There's going to be a bright light at the tunnel, and it's going to create change, and you're going to help pave that way. And man, thank you. I have to ask you, so you're screening it for people. I'm very curious because sometimes I'll say you're an ally. Thank you for being an ally. That, I feel like in order for my story to be told, I got to do myself. And that's why I do ShoPowSho, and I got to bring stories to people, because it's hard to get funded our stories, because again, we're not, quote unquote, the color for, what Hollywood thinks are the stories that need to be heard, but we all know, everyone here, that our stories deserve to be told. There's a lot of underrepresented voices that need to be told. So thank you for being an ally in that regard. So I have to ask you, as a white woman, but you have Native roots, but just what was that like? Did you feel when you started developing this? I'm curious what the audiences were and the reception and how mixed it were to just, I feel sometimes that only Filipinos want to support it, but then sometimes I've seen works like, hey, we got to create our own material, but then our own people aren't supporting our material, and it's hard, it's wild, it's weird. That's a lot of questions in one. I apologize.
What he's trying to ask.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah.
What was the reaction from your initial audience, and then in general, to you telling a Filipino story?
So I was really uncomfortable with the idea of me directing the feature, largely because of my main identity as a white woman. People look at me and they see a white woman. I never lived on a res. There are those who would say my blood quantum, forget it. I have my clan members, and the elders and the clan mothers all accept me, and that's great. And I am considered a member of the Lenape Nation, as are my children. But recognize that while I can feel my attachment there, it is not my core experience. My closest core experience is that of a white woman. And so it was uncomfortable. And, I talked to General Taguba about this at length. And, he basically said, he said, well, this is an American issue and you are an American. And so it was basically under the thought process of an allyship. But then the other crazy thing is trying to build a team as a director coming out of Colorado, which isn't got the largest Filipino population. It's a lovely Filipino population, but not a huge one, and not a lot of filmmakers. So it was a lot of seeking partners. I found our cinematographer that we took to DC out of Manila, Mara Benitez, and we've got Benito Bautista. He's joined us as a producer, and we've been able to work with a lot of Filipino people and a lot of people, of other diverse makeup, including people with disabilities and whatnot, to bring, a broader perspective to our audience so that we can reach that audience. So that was one thing, but it was uncomfortable. It still at times is comfortable. I have been openly challenged by, you know, a Filipino person who just said, you know, why are you telling our stories? I would like to believe that I'm amplifying the voices, that really what I am doing is I'm creating the platform. But I can understand and appreciate every argument that would say, you know, you've gone a bit too far. I don't know that I agree with it, but I can appreciate that point of view. And somebody said, you know, well, you could do a series on this. And I'm like, I could produce a series on this. Past this, I don't think I would continue to direct. Frankly, I know too many good Filipino directors now. So it would be more to help cultivate that voice. So, you know, that has been definitely a challenge. And as far as communities, it's been interesting, you know. First off, like there's a million things to get behind and give to, whether it's your time or other resources. And we have fought tooth and nail to get where we've gotten. Every filmmaker will always tell you getting the funds is difficult. Everybody feels like they're underfunded. You know, we owe money out the wazoo, and that's just the way that it is. But from my heart, from my producers, Amanda and Benito, we've all stood together and we're like, it will be done. It just will be done. Money be damned. We're going to get this done. So we have a lot of community alliances to drive word of mouth, you know, but we do still need funding to get the Impact campaign out there. So the screening that had happened in October in with the San Diego Filipino Cinema, that was a work in progress screening. And that was basically our test audience to see how we were doing and if we needed to change anything before we decided that we were going to lock that film, finish the score, and get the master out. And it went over amazingly well, which is a massive relief. It was incredibly well received, and I'm grateful that we were able to strike a balance with it. So we went back, we grabbed Michael Daddup, our composer, and locked him in a studio for 4 more days, and we scored to the picture with him. We had done some orchestral recordings in August, but we had to finish it, and so we got that locked down. We got closed captions done, and we sealed that picture. And it has been absolutely nerve-wracking to sit on it this long, waiting for festival premieres.
Right, because of the pandemic.
Yeah, and we're coming up on festival premieres. I can't say the first one yet. We don't have permission.
Okay, no worries.
But I will tell you.
Then keep your secrets.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, I don't want him to throw us out for me for popping off too soon. But we are confirmed for the GI Film Festival in San Diego.
Oh, awesome.
That is May 17th through the 21st.
Okay.
But we will be premiering a week prior to that. And as soon as I have that information, I'll be happy to share it with you.
Awesome. And we'll, you know what, I'll look and see if we can't schedule this in time right for it. For the release and promotion. So stay tuned. And if you're already watching this, because this will probably be in the edit, I don't know. Just depends on how I'm editing at that time. You'll see it, and please support it. We all need to learn this story, and I'm going to do my part to do what I can about this film and showcase it. So we need to do that, and we need to tell this. I'm assuming now it's, now that we're going to be going to these festivals, it's locked. We are on picture lock for the film. It's ready to show. Are there other resources, because you're trying to raise some more funding? Are there websites, or do you have like a Kickstarter? Are there any means that we can send money your way to help support?
Yeah, so we do have a website, alongmarch.com. We do have a fiscal sponsor, so if you hit the donate buttons on there, it is a tax-deductible donation. It goes through our fiscal sponsors and then comes back to us. We are looking at some Kickstarter campaigns, and we will be starting some grassroots community screenings that will be sponsored by various organizations. So we've got some of those in the works as well. And I'm sure that there are a million other great ideas on how to help us fundraise this. So we're open to receiving those ideas of how we can work together. So send them on.
All right. Definitely. Well, I'm definitely going to look into that. I've got a few things in the works that I'm plotting and planning, and I think this is right up my alley, and I would love to work with you to spread the word. You know, obviously we're going to do that here and now, but I would love to help even further. This story is very important to me as a Filipino American, and I can't thank you enough, again, as I said earlier, for being an ally and sharing this. One of the things that came to mind is this all kind of started with this artwork. I'm a big comics fan, I'm a big art fan, filmmaker. Are any of it featured in the film at all? And or maybe could be another side project, because I'm curious to see some of this artwork.
Right. I want to know what is depicted.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the artwork is shown in the film. There were 4 large oil paintings. The biggest one, I think, is about 4 by 5 feet. And one is a large one called Death March at Little Baguio, which is got a tank, and it's got the men marching and lots of gruesomeness. There's one that is a beheading. There is another that is a flaying. And then one more, it's set at night, and the men are huddled in the background as Japanese soldiers are kind of kicking back around a fire. They are depictions that come from the once censored story of Colonel Diaz. He was an American soldier pilot rather, who had escaped. And I believe that his story was originally being published in the Chicago Tribune, and the government censored it. The government had censored the story of the Death March and about the POW camps for some time. Part of it was, I think, to protect the morale of people back home. But I also am aware that some of it was because when the information was being leaked by escapees, the Japanese had a stated policy that if men escaped, that 10 more would be slain. So they didn't want there to be more carnage. So there was a couple of reasons why that was censored. But when the censorship of the story was lifted, that was when these paintings were churned out in a matter of about 2 months by artists or soldier artists who were part of the war art unit there in California. So they're pretty gross, but they're definitely the white POV. You're not seeing the torture of the Filipino troops who, were falling at 7 times the rate on the Death March, much less, dying at a far higher rate in the POW camps. So we were trying to figure out how on earth do we deal with that. And so we collaborated with Noni Cruzado, who is a Filipino illustrator. And he created beautiful illustrations for us. And then we sent those over to Mass Effects Media, and Mass Effects Media created further animations within the film. So not only will you see the artwork from those 4 films, but you'll see original Filipino artwork.
Oh, I love that.
That goes along with the stories. So yeah,
Awesome.
It's actually one of my favorite parts of all of it. And
Yeah.
I don't get to talk about it too much, it seems like.
Oh no. I love it. Especially the piece that you have that's your essentially your backdrop right now.
So this is our poster.
I really like that piece.
Yeah.
You know, it's heartbreaking, but it's real, and it's still, you know, like we're talking about the paintings. It's ugly, like you said. In regard to it's the POV perspective of the white man, that, you know, but it's a reality that, to me, when I see stuff like that, you know, because that's what's there and prevalent, it inspires in me in a way to like change that. You know, it can be an ugly image in what it is, but it's also, you know, there's something to it. But like the beautiful image that you have as your background, heartbreaking, but to me is amazing and beautiful. I'd love to learn more about that as well, if you could share.
Yeah, so Justin Basana, who he's actually, he does poster art and other restoration for ASB CBN.
Awesome.
He did our poster art, our key artwork for us. And I know he's available for hire. I highly recommend him. Okay. Absolutely have loved working with him to produce the key art and figure out, you know, how do we best visually tell the story. We have another poster version, but this one I feel is most striking. Like if people are looking, once they see it and they remember it, and now if they're looking to find us, either, you know, if we're on a lineup, maybe on Netflix, who knows?
Do it. Let's get it there, Netflix.
Or if they're in a theater, you know, what is something that strikes and you're like, oh, there it is.
Yeah.
So this was the image that we felt really did it. You know, obviously it is an inverted American flag. And then of course we have the Filipino sun coming up behind, and our veterans marching along. So it just, it blows my mind. And honestly, it was not my brainchild. It was Justin all the way. So I think that was like one of the coolest things, is the level of collaboration that happened on here. I mean, you always hear in the film industry, it's the director, it's the director, it's the director. And it's like, okay, the director, yeah, but director doesn't do anything alone. Very, very rarely. And definitely in this case, this was through and through a massive collaboration. And I couldn't be more pleased with what has come out of it. I'm more excited to have gotten to work with people I have, and I want to work with them again. Maybe on something a little more happy,
positive, more upbeat, but it's important. And shout out to your entire team. Yes, so beautiful. I have to tell you, since we're trying to raise money for a long march right now, if that was on a shirt, like I said, or a print, I would love to post that up and rock it if it was on a like.
Yeah. We're looking at. We do have a CD available. You can actually go and get our soundtrack on iTunes, and you know, pretty much wherever digital music is available, you can get a Long March soundtrack. It was written and conducted by Michael Dadup, who is a beloved Filipino musician, first to play Carnegie Hall. His beautiful bride, Yucheng Ma, accompanies on her violin for our theme song. We like to call it Feliciana's theme in-house, but the official title is Cavatina in E minor. It is an exquisite, heartbreaking melody that follows our narrator's point of view through the film. Yeah, so that is available. You can sample it online and then purchase it. We do have CDs. So if people want to hit me up, anybody who's like typing the contact form on our website, yeah, it's me. You're talking to me. So go ahead. You can always just send through. And actually, there is one of the pages on our website, so you can link through to purchase digitally on there. I think if you get a hard copy CD, you should probably wait till we get the maestro to sign it. Get Michael to sign those.
Oh, awesome. Awesome.
But and we can work that out on an order or something.
Okay.
And then we'll because merchandising is part of what's starting to come into the brain now.
Yeah.
The posters, reproductions of the artwork. This artwork has not been seen before. This will be it. This is like its public debut. I know the Smithsonian, we talked to them about having it. They just want to store it at this point. It's incredibly expensive for them to curate for show, and they have a lot of artwork out there. Mm-hmm. But with this documentary coming out, with their work that they actually do with Filipino Veterans Recognition and Education Project, who I keep calling Phil Vet Rep, if you didn't know.
Yes.
Perhaps their interest will change and it will look more like an exhibition. Perhaps the paintings will go back to I shouldn't say go back. They've never been to the Philippines, but perhaps they will tour the Philippines. We'll see what happens with that one.
All right. Well, this is after. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Tina.
Oh, I was just saying, I love to hear that there is you had mentioned like the impact team, like there's still an agenda behind it to share the story. The film is the first step. Now let's get these paintings in front of people's faces, and have the truth of what happened influence the policy of like making sure that the people that were passed over and that were betrayed by Congress are getting their rights and their benefits. Wasn't that recently too that
it's an ongoing fight, Tina. There's so many people I can't wait to talk about this and have already talked to, but I'll tell you offline, T. But
there's still progress to be made.
I love what this is all about.
Yeah,
I love what this is all about. And again, like I said earlier, I'm going to do my part, and hopefully this is going to be a start of some further collaboration in the future. Being that I live here in the DC area, which is where I'm at. So,
okay, good.
I'm all about being politically active over here, T.
All right. I'm all about coming out there and raising some hell with you.
Hell yeah, I love it. I love it. So,
I will say on impact that, really, as well as the educational values of the film, we do look forward to seeing it used as a tool by those who are creating the legislation and putting forth the legislation again this year. What is it, 24 years, I think, that the Filipino Veterans Fairness Act has gone up in one form or another, gone into committee and died in committee. And the reason is because we don't know our history. That's part of it. Part of it is because Congress is like, well, how many Filipinos do I have in my constituency? Well, then I just don't necessarily need to worry about that one. But we would like to make it quite clear that, we've got to pay attention. We need to make amends. Ronald Reagan apologized to Japanese internees, American Japanese, or Japanese American, sorry, I keep saying it. So I get it backwards. And, who were interned. And that happened in the 80s, and that should have happened a little bit earlier too, but it did happen. And it would be really, really, really appropriate for the government, for the President of the United States to acknowledge what happened here and to apologize to Filipinos, Filipino Americans, and these veterans who served under the United States flag. I think it's critically important. So, we are looking forward to using the platform as this film as a continued platform for Filvet Rep and all of the other partner organizations that are advocating for veterans to be fully recognized. Again, Celestino Almeida passed away over the weekend. He received recognition in 2017, right before the first Congressional Gold Medal ceremony. And, it's still a fight after that for him to actually get the benefits promised. There was a fight yesterday to get him the benefits promised for his burial rights. And that just incenses me. We have to do better. We just simply have to do better.
Amen.
All right, T, we're going to continue fighting this fight. Again, I look forward to helping you, just spread the word, shout it out the rooftops. I will be there right by your side. I want to leave on somewhat of another note as well. With this, I'm sure you're now doing this push. And again, we're going to help you with this push. Other projects and other ways people can check you out. I'm going to put the link in the description, people, so you can go and support, and please donate to this. And it's also will be on the screen as well for those watching this. But for those also listening that might be driving in their car right now, listening to this podcast, anything else you want to highlight before we leave out?
I don't know if you should get me started again, because we might be here another hour.
Well, and any other important subjects that, so since you're wrapped on this, or is your whole life right now on this, was there any other stories that you may have coming out soon that
this has been my main focus for the last 3 years. Prior to that, I did finish a screenplay about a Lenape boy being kidnapped in the early days of conquest of the United States, or not the United States, North America, which that wasn't its name back then. But that had gone up for some, festivals just to see what kind of feedback that I'd gotten from it. And I've since decided that will become a graphic novel. So I'm actually working with Noni Cruzado on character sketches and whatnot on that. And then I do have another crazy idea for a documentary. This one would be much more lighthearted. It is historical in nature, which is kind of weird because I never really thought of myself as being a history buff, but it's easy to go down those rabbit holes and what's going on there. But I got to keep mom's the word on that one. It's that one's not ready to come out yet. But,
no worries. Well, I just love that, again, you're, again, for your allyship and bringing this story to light. But, I don't want this creativity to end just here, because like I said, we're now, we're going to be pushing this film. It's there, but the creativity doesn't stop as a fellow creative, right? So I'm curious, I love this vision. I love what you're doing with it. But I want, as a friend to you now through this virtual thing we're doing, don't let your creativity and whatever you have coming in the future, I would love to show love and light on, give you flowers and help support and spread the word. So thank you for just sharing that little bit. And please, when those come out, come back through and share so we can help spread the word and do all we can.
All right, thank you. And it's been a pleasure, and it's my honor to stand in solidarity with, our Filipino brothers and sisters across the planet. That's what we are. We are a family.
Yes. Perfect way to end it there. Y'all.
Beautiful.
T.S. Botkin, check out A Long March. I will have the information in the description below on YouTube, and we'll also have it flashing across the screen in this final edit. There you go. T. Botkin, y'all.
Hi, Tammy Botkin here, otherwise known as TS, director of A Long March, coming at you on the ShoPowSho podcast. Looking forward to having you come and hear about the documentary film A Long March, which discusses the plight of Filipino World War II veterans and digs deeper into the causes of U.S. policy that basically erased these veterans from U.S. history, as well as world history, in an attempt to just keep the imperialist machine going. We actually are going to deconstruct what happened there within this film, and we just hope that you will come along and support us as we endeavor to bring recognition to about 1 million veterans who are still waiting to be recognized by the U.S. government. So come join us. We look forward to seeing you there.